Welcome to winterscoming.net. I am here with Vanessa Benton, writer on such shows as The Sandman, How to Get Away with Murder, The Winx Saga, and others. Vanessa, thanks for coming by. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm good. I mean, good given everything, as good as you could possibly be.
Good given
That's
everything possibly be. We could examine that statement, but well first I
that's a
just want to say
different.
that we're talking about. So when I was offered a opportunity to interview a writer on the Sandman, I was really excited because I've seen the Sandman. I am a huge fan of the Sandman comics. I've read them a couple of times. I've read them a bunch of times. I've read them twice. That's a lot.
That's
I
a lot
always
for
really
as
liked it.
much as this.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I watched the whole series. I was nervous about it. I genuinely ended up loving it. I'm very excited for people to see it. Because my first question is, how did you get involved with this show?
Yeah. So God. So my involvement kind of started at How to Get Away with Murder.
Hmm.
The Shondaland world is both big and small. And so when I was working under Pete Nowak, I was his assistant for a while. And obviously I wanted to become a writer. He knew
Sure.
that. The genre that I wrote in was always a bit different from murder. I was doing the dark fantasy stuff. My stuff was like heavily inspired by anime. So even though it was live
Cool.
action, a lot of fight sequences and stuff. And he was like, I love it, not my thing. So as he was trying to bring me up, it's like, well, Alan Heinberg, who was showrunner on The Catch at the time, he does that kind of comic-y stuff. And so we talked and all that. And so once Alan got the green light, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but once it kind of came
Mhm.
to be, he knew that that's what I did. He read my work and he asked to staff me. And I was like, yeah. Like, imagine if I was like, no, I really don't want to do this. You know what I mean? So it really just came from just like kind of putting myself out there as this kind of fantasy genre-ish writer, which for the time was still kind of not like a popular thing.
Like,
I feel like the genre-y stuff in Hollywood kind of have just recently become popular. But like when I first
yeah,
came out here, it was like, is that real? What are you doing? So it's nice that I kind of like got into my niche through Alan and he remembered me and all that during the murder time period.
100%. Like, when are you getting on? Because you said that the genre stuff didn't really start. I mean, right now, genre is absolutely everywhere.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, it's
absolutely.
it's it's crazy. Like for a site who's covering sci-fi and fantasy, it couldn't be a better time. Like
Oh, yeah.
when did you learn that you're going to be a part of the Sandman? Like
God.
ish,
Um,
yearish.
See, all the years to put it together. So I think it was 20, this could be a little bit off, but 2018 into
Okay,
2019. I'm not quite sure if that's the correct date. It happened months and months before the room actually started. So that's why I'm kind of like leery
gotcha.
on it. We started the room in 2019. So I'm like, I think early 2019, early 2018, not quite sure,
That makes
but months
sense.
and months before the room started. And I was just like, so am I still in? It's that thing where it's like, did I get fired without starting it? But yeah,
That makes sense because I mean, 2018 would have been like Game of Thrones is still on, but not done yet, and like we don't have things like The Witcher and The Wheel of Time and The Lord of the Rings and all these fans have just blown up all over the place. But right about when the big wave's going to giant crest.
exactly. Exactly.
I was wondering
Yeah.
because your bio said that you were a dark speculative fiction and horror writer. Then I say, okay, but you start in How to Go Away with Murder and the BET show. So you were always wanted to get into the genre stuff, but you were just kind of, I'm guessing, kind of taking the opportunities where you could at first, and then when the opportunity came along, got in.
Exactly. And so I started off like I went to school at NYU and at
Mm,
Tisch, and it's a, like love the school, but it is very much like you need to learn how to write characters. You need to get into cons. Like we don't do all like no character slow burn stuff. And so that's kind of
mm,
where I got my training from, which is why like
sure.
some of my early samples, it was a lot of that. So coming into Hollywood, I definitely wanted to do more genre stuff. And it really wasn't until I wrote my fuck it script and I was like, well, this is what I want to do. I know that this is what I was trained to do. And I know that Hollywood isn't quite into this, but like, fuck it. And that ended up being the script that got me stabbed. So yeah, it was definitely the right time. But I feel like before that, especially the early days when I graduated in 2015, it kind of felt like Hollywood was like, yeah, but do you have anything else to show that you can write? You know?
Yeah. And now it's like the more vampires, demons, swords, sorceries, dragons. You can throw it at the more they like it.
Exactly.
I'm wondering like how long it'll last, but I'm just enjoying the ride right now of all this stuff. So about the Sandman. So again, forgive me if I fanboy out a little bit. Were you familiar with the comics before, or did you read them when you got the job, or what?
I was familiar with the comics before. Obviously, I wasn't around when they first came out in 1989.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So I think it was kind of funny. I read them in college because when I originally went to University of Wisconsin and I wanted to do writing, but I was doing poli-sci and all this other shit. So during that time, I kind of found solace and happiness and like relearning my love of like comics and manga. And that's when I found Sandman, because again, it was like, okay, this is kind of dark.
Yeah.
So that it became like a favorite just because it got me through a dark time of trying to figure out my life in college. And then obviously when I got the job, it's like, yeah. And then I reread it and found a new love for it and read it a million times since working in the room.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, so I'm watching the show and, you know, sometimes you watch like an adaptation and you're not really like, sometimes they stick really close, sometimes they don't. The Sandman, I thought the show stuck pretty close in a lot of ways to the source material. Like, are you in the room with the writers kind of making those calls, or you just kind of assigned your episode 9 and you write that? Like, what's the process like on this particular show? Because I know it's kind of different depending on the show.
Yeah, this show kind of follows the standard that we're all in the room together. Yes, making calls, but ultimately the official green light went to our showrunner, Alan Heinberg, and of course, Neil Gaiman. And so the sticking close to those big moments was really, really important. I learned a lot about adapting in general because like you said, a lot of adaptations either skew all the way to the left or it's just like the same thing. And I think with the Sandman, it was just really important for us to make it so it's like, we are honoring longtime fans, but also, you know, keeping it fresh. So new fans are not like, what's going on? And they still have an entryway in. But yeah, all of that was approved by Gaiman and Heinberg.
Very exciting. For your episode, how'd you get assigned that one? Because that's definitely an iconic one from the comics. Like the serial killer convention is sort of one of the first things I think of when I think of the Sandman, because it's just so with a weird mix of kind of silly and scary and just very specific and strange. Like, how'd you get that one specifically?
Honestly, I wish I had a really cool answer for you. I don't. I think I was just like, oh shit, that's me. I don't know if it's just because I was really into that, that kind of serial killery, horror-y stuff. But I just feel very lucky. So I wish I had a cool answer for that, but right place, right time. Alan was like, sure, you know, go ahead. And I feel really grateful for it. And again, I think it helps that we were all super collaborative on all the episodes. So it didn't feel like I was just like, okay, this is on my back. Let me take this. It kind of felt like we all just worked on it together.
Sure. Which is what you want. Is there anything kind of in the season or in the episode that you feel like was your suggestion in the room? I know that's very collaborative, but I'm sure some ideas get through. So is there like any thing that you pitched that you're happy that made it in?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I don't know. I'm so sorry. It's been so long.
Oh, no,
like the
fine.
room has been
That's
so long ago. I'm like, I don't know. Probably. And if I could tell you, I would, but I'm like, it's been so long.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Then the episode itself, Collectors. So you sit down to write it. Are you working off an outline that you all put together? Like, how much control do you have when you sit down to like kind of play within the lines that you guys already drew in the room?
That's kind of the great thing about Alan. Like, he actually talked to me about that, not on this episode, but just in general, where it's like, so there's budget, there's visual effects, there's a bunch of shit that's going to be like, yes or no, that has nothing to do with you. And that was my first staff writing job. So cool. I was coming from the place of like, I'm going to write the craziest stuff. I'm going to write the biggest, everything's going to be a huge scene. And he told me like, keep the creativity, but understand that when it comes time to edit or cut or shoot, a lot of stuff may not make it in because of all those millions of things. And so when it came time to write, we worked off an outline that we kind of broke all together in the room. Nothing was like a surprise. You're prepared. We're kind of beat by beat. But then when it comes time to write your episode, you are encouraged to kind of, well, I was encouraged to keep that creativity. So as long as you're not changing up the entire story,
Right.
lines, beats, moments, like those are the things that end up being your stamp, that, you know, are within budget and time restriction.
Right.
So that was kind of the best part about the show, where it's like we are working in a visual effects heavy show. So like
Definitely.
let
Yeah.
your creativity shine, and then we can try to see if we can make it. So that's kind of what the process was. And then obviously, because of how streaming works now, there's a huge distance between us and shooting and airing and stuff like
Right.
that. So in between that, things change based on a million of things. You know what I mean? So that was the process.
I was going to ask. I mean, I expect the answer is no, but I was going to ask if you got to work at all with, say, Stephen Fry or Tom Sturridge or any other actors.
Mm,
Again, yeah, no, probably not. No.
I know. I'm like, I love streaming for a lot of different reasons, but the
Mhm.
working on production is like, that's the one thing that I'm like, I wish we could do more of, you know?
When you're a showrunner eventually, I'm sure you get your own
Yeah,
show at
of
some
course,
point.
of
Yeah.
course.
Next year, 2024, 2025.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
actually, 6 months. No, I'm just like,
um, I mean, I hope Sandman is a success. I really do. And then you all get very famous and big and make your own shows. Because I just, I'll be honest. Like, so I'm watching the Sandman, and I'm really liking it just because I think it's a good show, and because I'm very thrilled to see this stuff kind of brought to life, and I know really well and like a lot. But there is a part of me that's kind of like, ooh, this asks a lot of the viewer. The tone changes a lot. I really hope people get it and it hits.
yeah.
How do you feel about that? Like, are you at all nervous, or are you pretty confident that like this is going to go? Like, people are going to find and really appreciate this.
I kind of feel confident because like obviously like you said there's a lot of an ask of the audience. Every
Mm-hmm.
episode's kind of different tone, different cast of characters, like mini movies each episode.
Right.
Um and I just feel like audiences have watched so much TV at this point and are very intelligent, or at least open at this point,
Mm-hmm.
that even if they decide that it's not for them, I think that they'll be able to appreciate something different. So I do feel really confident in what we did, and I feel like there'll be a lot of people who are just engaged on oh, this is nice, like, this is cool and different. I don't really know what's happening, but you know, our actors are great, and I'm intrigued. And obviously, hopefully, the fans that already read the stuff know that this is just how it
Right.
is in the
Absolutely.
comic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just feel a strong sense of confidence in audiences in general nowadays, that they have the capacity to hold a lot more. I mean, they did Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones was huge, and it's like
Yeah. Yeah. There are
that was
like
a lot, you
18,000
know.
characters. They all had hard to pronounce names, and people followed anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. So
I,
yeah.
I I'm really hoping for the best. It's this Friday, man. Going back to the actor thing. So you didn't work with the actors, obviously, which makes sense. Did you know who was going to play? Like, did you write in Stephen Fry's voice, for example, for Gilbert, or do you not even know who's going to play that yet when you're writing?
Again, because it was so far away, we didn't know, especially for 9 at that point, like we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know who was
Right.
going to be cast. That's such a far away process. Um, Even when it came to Dream, who's played by Tom Sturridge at this
Oh,
point,
so
at
good.
first we have no idea. Yeah, we had no idea who it was. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like we mostly tried to write, from what I remember, just write to the general tone and respecting the essence of the character itself.
Sure.
And then from there, everyone that they casted just so happened to kind of match like that. Like it was a perfect casting for everyone. So it didn't feel like we necessarily had to change things and be like, oh, well, this actor can't do that. It just felt like, oh, this is perfect. Of course, of course. And obviously, once we knew who things were, playing into their strong points a little bit more. But again, it just kind of felt like writing the characters, and
Yeah, of
the
course. They're already
actors brought
there.
to life because they were perfect.
It The cast is very, very strong. I was impressed by that too. And Tom Sturridge especially just impressed me because that role you need to get so right if the show's going to go. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
he's broody, he's moody. This is working. Um,
Yeah.
do you have like a favorite sort of after you watch the episodes, which I assume you did you have
Mhm.
like anything that popped out at you as surprising, or anything that you really, really enjoyed? Just like a casting decision or a scene that came to life in a way you weren't quite expecting, or anything like that?
this is gonna sound so petty, but I really enjoyed his interaction with Matthew because I wasn't quite sure how that was gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Just because again, like I was like, so is it a puppet? Is it like a real thing? Like
Right.
I was like, how is that gonna work? And so I was actually really pleasantly surprised at how that turned out and how beautiful those shots were. The pilot, just the whole of it. Now I'm going to start gushing. The
Go
whole
ahead.
visual aspect of Dream in the like him being trapped and all that, like
Sure.
that was absolutely gorgeous. The sets were gorgeous. I really wish that I could have been there to see it in real life. Yeah, sorry. Now I'm on a tangent, but I think
that's fine. Tangent away.
Visually, I saw, cuts of it before all of the effects were finished. And it's like, okay, I'm curious. And then seeing it now, I'm like, these motherfuckers are geniuses. This is amazing. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel. It's just a very beautiful show.
It really is. It definitely is a gorgeous show. And again, so varied. Like we go into the past and the future, the dreaming, like they put a lot of money into this. And again, I'm saying, I just hope it goes up. In terms of your episode, and I saw you have non-Sandman questions too, by the way, eventually. But in terms of your episode,
sorry, I'm being like tighter lipped because I'm like, oh, it's coming out.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, we're almost there. So assume that we're going to publish this like after it's out, by the way. So we can be a little, at least, I think we can be a little more spoilery. So when you're writing an episode like The Collectors that has kind of scenes that are both very intense, I'm thinking of like Lyta and Hector breaking up and then Hector dying and Dream saying the baby's mine, and then really kind of lighter, more satiric, funny scenes like Gilbert wandering through the serial killer convention, dropping in on panels where they're talking about what they do. Do you like have a kind of scene that you like writing more, like the really dramatic stuff versus the kind of dark humor stuff? Or do you just approach it all the same? What gets you excited to write?
I think the more dark humor gets me excited because even walking through the panels to me was a bit of the dark humor because it's like what they're saying, the double entendres. It's like, so I don't know, but dark humor, just because obviously darkness and disturbing content is awesome, but it's made even worse when you can cut it with humor that is kind of funny and for a second gives you a moment of reprieve just to be like, oh, but this is a serial killer convention. And so that is my absolute favorite thing to do because I think it just amplifies the horror of any scene. Yeah.
And there's good like material in the comics for that. Like I
absolutely
I recall those panels. And again, I was just pleasantly surprised that like, oh, I remember the weird circuit panels like from the comic, and here they are with like the little twists on them. It was just so good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned wanting to go that you weren't on set that much. Maybe season 2. Have you heard anything about season 2? Any rumblings? Any nothing?
I haven't heard anything about season 2. That's why I'm like really excited for season 1 to come out because I'm like, please, my fingers are crossed. There's so much more of the comic to go. Like that was obviously it's like how fast do you go? How slow do you go in a season? And we have so much more to cover. So I'm hoping that we get a season 2. Fingers are crossed, honestly.
Right. Yeah, mine too. If you do get a season 2, let's say. Anything you'd be particularly interested in bringing to life and writing up?
I think what I was really excited about this season and that Neil Gaiman was really cool about was when we had to look at characters, look at circumstances and modernize it. And so I feel like, or just address like how times have changed, how society has changed. And so I think just continuing to do that, depending on where we would start in season 2 and all of that. But I think I'm so impressed with how Neil is so open to that. And I feel like as a writer, that's kind of like what I like to do, which is to just make sure that things are being looked at through the lens of 2022 and onward. So I'd love to get the opportunity to continue doing that with the comics. And there's so much like political and I don't know, societal stuff that's brought up in the comics, especially like flashbacks and current day, which was the 80s at the time. I would just love to, continue to do that. I don't know. That was just really exciting for me because I know some people are very close with their work and we can't change anything. You can't recast, obviously Death is a Black woman now.
Right.
So I like that he's so open, and I would love to continue doing that in season 2.
Was Neil Gaiman ever in the room with you guys? Because you said that he got approval on stuff, but did you end up meeting him, talk with him?
I did meet him. He's super busy. I met him once.
Of course.
I'm sure if I was like, hey, I met you, he'd be like, okay. But basically, so his connection with Alan, that was kind of like a constant back and forth. Mm-hmm. So Alan would come back in and then give us like Neil's thoughts, Neil's notes, and then we would come back off of that. So he definitely didn't have time to be in the room every day, but he knew everything.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. I remember he said that he cried at episode 6, the one with Death and Hobgoblin, which just to me, that was my personal favorite one. I was crying at that one rather more than I expected to.
Yeah,
the show's just really good. I'm really hoping it does well. I hope for all you guys it does really, really well.
I'm glad you liked 6. 6 was like a lot of introspection on like what we wanted to show as far as Hob and Dream and that whole story and showing connections with humans and in his personal journey. That episode, I remember it went through a lot of changes and a lot of thought. I don't know. I just remember putting a lot of care and energy into that relationship between those two. So I love that episode.
So good. I mean, and also him and Death was also extremely good. And it played so well together. Like the first bit is kind of Death sort of convincing him to connect with humanity again. And then he goes into the whole Hobgoblin story. It was fun because those two stories, I don't think are the same in the comic. They're different things, but they really worked well as like one unit, I thought. That's just a really strong episode. 5 too, I also liked a lot. And again, it was like the exact opposite because it's the darkest, most grisly thing, and then you go to like the sweetest, most wonderful thing, which is really cool and different, and other shows aren't really doing that, which is another reason I think should be good. I don't mean to just completely fawn over the show the entire time, but
no, please, that makes me feel good. I'm like, yes, that means like at least a fan likes it, you know. Like
you have at least one person who will hashtag renew Sandman on the Twitter and get a petition going. I'm gonna have a meeting with Netflix and
I'll be like, he likes it, so that's all we need. Season 2, please.
Okay. Before we move on from other things, any other thing you want people to know about the Sandman, your work on it, your hopes for it? What spoke to you about it?
I just feel like we mentioned earlier, with there at first being a moment where TV wasn't really a fan of the fantasy and all that stuff. I just feel like this to me represents the culmination of the very quick years of building up in everyone loving genre and genre getting its just due and technology being right and all of that. Like this show, whether people like it or they don't like it, to me, it just represents like, look at what we can do in the genre. Everything's different. Everything is beautiful. These characters, it's an adaptation at that, and it was able to change and update to today time. So like, I just really feel like it is a great representation of what genre can do for TV. That's like my
ultimate elevator pitch for it. Okay, and again, we'll cross your fingers for it. One of the other thing I got in your bio was, can you tell me about God Bless the Promised Land? Because that sounded very interesting. It's a thing you're working on that combines a lot of different multimedia stuff. It said like email blasts and short films and emails and other stuff. What is that, and what are your hopes for that?
Yeah. So in 2020, I got this grant from this accelerator program called Starfish Accelerator. And it was a grant to give like marginalized creators an opportunity to make IP. Because that's like, as we're talking about, IP is like the thing, especially if you are kind of a fantasy-ish person. So I took a script that I wrote it a long time ago. It was my Climate Panic script. And I took it, and with a bunch of mentors, it was going to be just a graphic novel because I was like, I want to get into graphic novels, but I had awesome mentors who are really great at marketing, who were like, well, if you want to pitch your graphic novel, you can, pretend like your main character is a real person on the internet, and that can get interest and da-da-da. And from there, it became this, well, instead of it being a graphic novel, we should just tell the story as like archival footage. So it feels like it's very, very real. And from there, it's like, and now the audience can take part in the game. So it became this massive thing where basically now It is both. There's two parts of it. One is like an alternate reality game for folks who are interested in that. I kind of put that on pause because that is a very new thing, and people were like, "I'm not sure," and more focusing on the actual story of it. So, long story short of it, climate disaster. The main character's whole journey is just about purpose, and this is kind of reflective of how I felt in 2020. Is purpose a real thing, and does it fucking matter when the world is on fire and people are dying? Like, is it just okay to exist? And so it's following this character through her, the whole thing of it is surveillance footage. So it's following through her tapped phone, videos, photos, sound bites that people have placed microphones throughout the city. And you as the audience member are kind of playing as the government who was spying on her. And that's how you're reading through her file. And so, yeah, that is, I'm developing it with this awesome developer. I met him very randomly on Reddit, but he's amazing. He's building the website from scratch. The website feels like you're logging into a portal to kind of give it that gamified feeling in case people don't want to play the alternate reality game. And you can observe the story that way. And so that's launching hopefully end of September. I'm really passionate about it. That we shot it all via Skype and Zoom, which kind of helped because it's like on the phone. It was during the pandemic, and my cast is amazing. We were all in different places around the country, around the world. The sound guy was in a different place, and we made it work, and I love it. And I'm really digging playing with different forms of media to tell story, especially more of the horror and sci-fi stories. It's just as much as I feel like audiences are ready for, you know, Sandman, I feel like audiences are getting ready to play with like, well, we can learn stories through obviously through video games or through that like multiple choice players. You can decide what the story is, or graphic or visual novels. So yeah, I'm really, that's kind of like my brand is just like discovering different ways to tell stories.
It definitely sounds cool because I haven't really heard of anything. I'm sure there exist other things that are like that.
Oh, sure.
But I'm not sure anything's like really caught on. But sooner or later, something like that, I'm sure will blow up. Hopefully it's yours.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And when did you say it was coming out?
End of September of this year, 2022.
Right. Lovely. Coming up right
yeah, and if anyone's interested, they can just follow me on my socials.
Which are where?
Then I will. So my Twitter is V James, just V and then James. I have purple hair in it. And then my Instagram is Nessa James 2_ purple hair. Just follow the purple hair and you'll find it.
I actually was going to ask, just this question is about nothing. Is it on purpose that your hair is matched to your chair or a great coincidence?
My chair matches my hair. It's the opposite. Because purple's my favorite color. And I'm like, I'm going to buy a purple gaming chair. I wish I would have got black now because it matches more things, but it's fine.
Yeah. It looks cool. It's definitely a cool effect.
Thank you.
But this has been a lot of fun. And again, I'm looking forward to it tremendously, The Sandman. And a couple of Promised Lands, God bless the Promised Land, sounds extremely cool. Are you still working on the Wink saga? That's one I didn't look into quite as much. But
yeah. So I worked on season 2 and so no, I think we're again waiting to see if there's a season 3 or what's happening with that. Right. But yeah, and I think that's coming out soon-ish as well. I'm always like late to find, I think in September as well. But yeah, so that was I wrapped that room up in 2021, and those were some of the most fun writers I've ever worked with in my life. It was a great time. Cool. I love those writers. Yeah.
Oh, about the writers' room, just really quick before we go out. Are writers' rooms like remote at this point during the pandemic, or were you actually going into like an old-fashioned writers' room around a table yelling at a whiteboard? Or you like at home kind of in a Zoom writer's room?
Yeah, so Sandman was in olden times when we were in person right before 2020. The season 2 of Winx, that was virtual. And I'm hearing some rooms are doing like a hybrid situation where it's like we'll come in 1 week to meet each other and then the rest of the weeks will just be virtual. So I'm kind of hearing still virtual rules, but I'm not sure. Maybe with monkeypox, it'll be virtual again.
Yeah, that's the next pandemic. Give us like at least a couple months to get over this last one. Exactly. One pandemic at a time.
And I guess. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, heck, go ahead.
I think just because I was thinking about writers, the last thing that I want to say just about Sandman in general is that like literally the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very dumb at moments, but just quick, intelligent, and so nice. Like one of the writers and I were going to see My Chemical Romance, so they were
Oh, fun.
awesome, awesome writers, but just so intelligent and really like elevated everything. So I just want to shout out them, and I'm very grateful to have worked with them for my first experience, and I learned so much. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to gush about that, but
Oh
I
no.
love them.
This is the gushing about the Sandman interview is the theme I wanted to kind of play out. I'm happy we did it. Okay, Vanessa, anything else you want to say before we sign off about anything at all? Hair, your
Um,
chair, the Sandman, wink.
Please watch Sandman. I hope you give it a shot. I hope you give these actors praise and follow them because they're amazing. Again, just very grateful to have been a part of this project. I hope there's a season two. And yeah, that's pretty much it.